And again, that can be rewarding and it can be fun, but generally speaking, to hit your PRs indirectly while you get an overload is much more beneficial. My elbow has a specific distance from the rib cage, and that also starts to get into that concept of torque, which is the force times radius. And as I start to move through the press, as the load gets heavy, there's a tendency for people to accidentally internally rotate the arms. What's going on, everybody? Hey, it's Hopper again. We got Brutus in the house, and of course, we've got the Ultimate Warrior. We are back at it with another video. This video is going to be 3 do's and don'ts for the gym. There's these 3 things that we need to discuss immediately that I have a difficult time with when I see in a gym setting. So let's do this. The first thing is we need to avoid band-assisted pull-ups, where people have a pull-up bar and they tie the band to it and they stick their foot into the band and then they proceed to do the pull-ups. And I'll show you why right here.
You've just got to be careful how you get out of it. Good luck. Holy shit.
Somebody wants.
Okay, so this exercise is a hot mess. Forgive my slang here.
Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
But the physics behind this lift alone is enough to not do it. Forget the fact that the band will come up and snap people in the body and cause some pain and whatnot. So when we look at an actual pull-up, let's look at from the lateral point of view. So here is the pull-up bar. Okay, we have an individual who has the hands, here's the arms, here is the person's head. Okay, it's attached to the body. Forgive my amazing artwork here.
Black and white.
Down, and here's their feet. So essentially, if we have this individual whose head is underneath this bar right here and their arms are attached, in theory, we don't have a radius. And what I mean by that is if we were to draw an XY axis, just like that, we can see that the individual is directly underneath the barbell. And this band right here, as it's attached to their feet, is what's going to start to cause the problem. If we look at torque, which is equal to force times radius, if there is no radius, then there's no torque. If the radius is 0. So if an individual were to do a pull-up and they were to stay directly underneath the barbell and pull themselves up, that's a minimal amount of torque. As opposed to when an individual has a band wrapped around their foot, what has a tendency to happen is when they move in for the pull-up, they move way back like this. So the individual, if the pull-up bar is here, as they go to do the pull-up, their head is here. And their arms are attached, and now they're trying to do the pull-up. And now we have this radius right there. Okay, so not only does their body have to contend with gravity at 9.81 meters per second squared, we'll just round that up to 10 meters per second squared. Not only do we have to contend with that while we regularly hold on to the bar, but as we move into the pull-up, now we have to also contend with the radius. And if the band were to fall off the foot and they slip back and fall and hit their head on the floor, it could be disastrous. Forget the fact that the band will often come up and slap people in the body and cause some pain. Additionally, as our body starts to lean back and we experience this radius as we do this assisted pull-up, the abilities of our fingers to grab the actual bar will start to diminish because we lose the leverage. We start to lose this lever arm of the fingers on the bar because the hands start to move this way. So it makes it way more difficult to hold on to the barbell because we lose the leverage on the fingers, and now we are contending with the radius as well as gravity, and this exercise has got to go. It is so dangerous. A great supplemental exercise to do is to utilize the pull-up assist machine right here. This is a variation of a single arm pull-up negative that I do regularly. However, a pull-up assist machine can be used in numerous different ways to help an individual complete a pull-up. Now, I understand that there are these socialized ideas of how many pull-ups can you do, or a common goal might be, I want to do a pull-up, and that's acceptable. That's totally fine. However, trying to do a pull-up during a workout is not going to be anywhere as near as effective as if an individual were to utilize pull-up variations to break down the tissues better. The example that I showed of me on the pull-up assist machine is a single arm pull-up negative, to where I utilize a certain amount of weight that I can't physically pull up with one arm. We are stronger eccentrically when the tissue lengthens than we are concentrically. Thereby, if an individual can do a couple of banded pull-ups like this, they would be much better off if they took a box, stepped themselves up onto the box, started up at the top, and then let themselves down as slow as possible to tear that tissue down. The idea of just trying to do a pull-up while we go to the gym for a workout is nowhere near as effective as if an individual were to do 10 reps of a pull-up negative. They descend 4 to 6 seconds, walk themselves back up, and descend again. You could take a couple minutes of rest in between the reps, but that gets into training theory, and that's not necessarily what this video is about. However, we need to avoid the banded pull-ups. This exercise is horrific. Every time I see it, I just cringe, especially when the gym has a pull-up assist machine. Not every gym has one, so you can resort to walking up onto a box, letting yourself down slow, and utilizing that eccentric tension. Again, the purpose of the gym is to break the tissues down, not necessarily to try and perform well. Hit those PRs indirectly. If you squat more than you've ever squatted before, or if you actually get the chance to do the pull-up, hit those indirectly. That's a much better training protocol, because if we try to hit our PRs directly, then we take 5 to 6 minutes of rest in between each rep, and we really try to focus on the pull-up. And that can be rewarding and it can be fun, but generally speaking, to hit your PRs indirectly while you get an overload is much more beneficial. Okay, number 2, the second don't is we need to avoid the over-under grip on the deadlift. We do not need to do that. The over-under grip on the deadlift is gonna place too much isometric tension on the bicep brachii, and it could easily cause a tear in the bicep, just like this. A better alternative to this over-under grip on the deadlift is a prone grip. Both hands are palm down, and we utilize the hook grip. Yeah. The hook grip is when we take the fingers and wrap as much of the fingers around the thumb as possible. Now, if an individual has never done this before, initially the hook grip, it feels loose and it feels awkward. And if your nervous system isn't used to this, if you haven't acquired the skill set for this, it'll feel like you're gonna let go of the barbell, but you won't. And over time, as you become more accustomed to this, you'll never return back to the over-under grip like this ever. So utilizing the hook grip with some chalk is a great alternative. The next alternative, if we're pulling 400, 500 pounds, is to utilize wrist wraps. Okay, those wrist wraps that go around the wrist, wrap around the bar, grab them just like this. Some people might make snide comments if you're utilizing the wrist wraps or whatever.
Moron. Raider of the Lost Fart.
It doesn't matter. It's much safer than tearing a bicep utilizing the over-under grip. And this type of asymmetry while we lift, especially under heavy loads, is something we should never expose our body to. So utilize the hook grip while we deadlift and or with the wrist wraps, and that's a much better alternative than using the over-under grip on a deadlift. And for the third and final don't and do is we need to avoid internal rotation on a bench press. Internal rotation of the humeri. So during a bench press, it can be extremely easy to moderately cheat the lift. And if we were to look at my elbow has a specific distance from the rib cage, and that also starts to get into that concept of torque, which is the force times radius. And if I start to press, ideally what I want is to ensure that my lats are engaged, my shoulder blades are down, and as I start to move through the press, as the load gets heavy, there's a tendency for people to accidentally internally rotate the arms. And what happens is, even though that the elbow starts to climb up towards the ceiling, if I were face down, that would be, the elbow would be moving towards my head. What happens is, as that elbow internally rotates, it decreases the radius from my rib cage. Even though the elbow is higher, the distance from my elbow to my rib cage here is less than the distance from here to here. And so it can be extremely easy to cheat that lift and internally rotate the arms. When we internally rotate the arms, the subscapularis starts to become significantly more overactive than it should. The anterior portion of the deltoid starts to become too overload, too stressed out, as well as the pectoralis major. The best thing to do to get that overload is to ensure that the shoulder blade is down, and as we move through the lift, we keep that elbow aligned and we avoid that internal rotation. Getting that internal rotation on will simply just help us to move the weight better. We want to overload those tissues. The actin and myosin fibers that are in your tissues, they don't know that we are moving weight. They don't know that you are working out, so to speak. We just want to overload those tissues. And you may not look as cool in the gym because you're not moving as much weight. But your technique is better when you keep the elbow in this spot versus the internal rotation. And I can guarantee you, your shoulders will thank you over the course of the years. So that's it for this video. For those of you that have any questions, of course, please feel free to send me an email. My contact information is in the description box below. For those of you that wish to support this channel, please visit the links in the description box below to donate. At the very least, please like this video and subscribe to this channel for so much more content that will be coming here soon. And share this content on other social media platforms. And we will see you all next time. Thank you.